Today's lesson is about adding integers. In the last lesson, we learned about what integers are, we learned about what the opposite of an integer is, and we learned about what the absolute value of an integer is. Today we're going to use the concept of absolute value and the values of integers to help us add them together. We're going to learn how to add integers on a number line, we're going to learn how to add integers using chips, and we're going to add integers using mathematical concepts. So let's start with number lines. When you want to add integers using a number line, you always start at the integer 0. 0 has no value, so we start at 0, and from there we move on the number line based on the two integers in the math problem. So, if you have a positive integer in a math problem, what that means is on the number line, you're going to move the number of spaces to the right that integer shows. If an integer is negative, negative numbers appear on the left of the number line, so if the integer is negative, we have to move spaces to the left on the number line. The spaces we move are based on the number's absolute value. So, example A, negative 6 plus 2. Since the first number is negative, we're going to start at 0 on the number line, and we're going to draw an arrow 6 spaces to the left. You can see on the number line here, we started at 0, and we moved 6 spaces to the left on the number line. We're going to stay at that location, negative 6, and we're going to take our second number in the problem, which is positive 2, and we're going to move 2 spaces. Since the second integer is positive, we're going to move 2 spaces to the right on the number line from where the last arrow ended. So, as you can see here, we started at negative 6 because that's where the first arrow ended. We moved 2 spaces on the number line in the direction to the right because the integer is a positive number. The answer to the math problem is where the last line ends. The last line or arrow ends at negative 4, so what that means is that negative 6 plus 2 equals negative 4. Let's practice. Take a few minutes, try to use a number line to answer the questions below. Hit pause on your video, and when you finish, hit play, and it will show you the answer to the problem. It will also give a short explanation. As you can see, negative 6 plus negative 3 equals negative 9. The first arrow started at 0 and went 6 spaces to the left to get to negative 6. Since the second integer is negative, it continued moving left 3 more spaces to get to negative 9, which is the answer to the problem. In the second example, the first arrow started at 0 and moved 8 spaces to the right because 8 is a positive integer. From there, it moved to the left 10 spaces because negative 10 is a negative integer. The second arrow ends at negative 2, which means the answer to the question is negative 2. Now we're going to learn to add integers without a number line. Here are the rules that you need to know. When you have two integers that show the same sign, so for example, 2 positive integers or 2 negative integers, all you do is add their absolute values and keep the sign that the numbers show. So for example, adding 2 positive numbers is a positive answer. Adding 2 negative answers is a negative answer. When they have different signs, even though it's an addition problem, we actually have to subtract the absolute values. And to figure out what sign goes with the answer, we look at the 2 absolute values and see which one's larger, and we use the sign from that original integer. So, some easy phrases to remember that might help you with deciding whether you should add or subtract in a math problem like this. If the 2 integers have the same sign, you find the sum of those numbers. Sum is the mathematical term that means the answer to an addition problem. When they have different signs, however, you're going to find the difference. Difference is the mathematical term that means the answer to a subtraction problem. So, 2 integers with the same sign, you find their sum. 2 integers with different signs, you find the difference of the absolute values. So, for example, we have 2 integers here. Both of them are negative. Negative 9 plus negative 7. Both signs are negative, so we have to add the absolute values. The absolute value of negative 9 is positive 9. The absolute value of negative 7 is positive 7. 9 plus 7 is 16. That's not our final answer, though, because we have to look back at the original problem here and notice that both of the integers have a negative sign. What that means is your answer also has to have a negative sign. So the answer is actually negative 16. Negative 9 plus negative 7 is negative 16. Now let's look at example B. Example B shows one negative integer, negative 10, being added to a positive integer, positive 12. So the signs are different, so we have to find the difference or subtract the absolute values. The absolute value of 12 is 12. The absolute value of negative 10 is positive 10. If you notice, I lined them up so I'm subtracting the larger absolute value from the smaller absolute value, 12 minus 10. You're allowed to do that, and that's actually the correct way to do it. You should always do the larger absolute value minus the smaller absolute value. We all know that 12 minus 10 is 2, but that's not our final answer yet. We have to go back to the original problem in green here and see which of the numbers has the greater absolute value. 12 has the greater absolute value, and 12 is a positive number. So what that means is the answer is going to have a positive sign with it or be a positive integer. So the answer is positive 2. Now let's practice. Let's find the sum of each of these problems. Hit pause on your video, work out the problems the way we just showed in the examples, and when you're done, hit play again and it'll show you the answer to the problems with a short explanation. If you notice, in question 1, both numbers are negative, both integers are negative, so we find the sum of their absolute values. 14 plus 9 is 23, and since both integers are negative, the final answer to this problem is negative 23. In question 2, there's different signs, so we find the difference of the absolute values, larger minus smaller. 31 minus 22 is 9. Negative 31 has the larger absolute value, so our answer is going to have a negative sign, negative 9. And then the last question, different signs again, so we subtract, find the difference. 33 minus 17 is 16. Negative 33 has a larger absolute value than positive 17, so we use the sign that goes with that number, negative, and the answer would be negative 16. The last method I'm going to show you is adding integers using the zero pair method. In this method, we're going to use different colored chips to represent positive and negative. On the screen, you can see that one yellow plus sign chip represents positive 1. One negative gray chip represents negative 1. Chips can be put into pairs to create a zero pair. Positive 1 plus negative 1 equals 0. They cancel each other out. So we can use that concept to help us figure out math problems without using either of the rules that we just were shown. So here's an example. Negative 9 plus positive 7. I'm going to start out with 9 negative chips and 7 positive chips. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair them up. I'm going to pair one negative one and one positive one. And I'm going to keep doing that until I run out of chips to pair. So as you can see, I pair them up here. 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, 4 pair, 5 pair, 6 pair. There are 7 pairs of positive negative chips. And each one of those equals 0. The first pair right here equals 0. The second pair equals 0, and so on. So each of those pairs has no value. The chips that still have value are the chips that don't get paired up with an opposite chip. So the 2 on the end, you can see, aren't paired, and they're both negative. So what that means is that we can cross out the 0 pair chips, as shown here, and the 2 remaining chips in that little box to the right here show you the answer to the math problem. So negative 9 plus 7 equals negative 2. Thank you for watching again. If you need to rewind, go ahead and do that. Rewatch this. Use this for help on your homework, your lessons in class, and preparing for quizzes and tests.